It's wonderful to be here with you today, Kathleen. Gosh, you have written an authoritative book, a guide on narcissistic parenting called My Parent the Peacock, Discovery and Recovery from Narcissistic Parenting. I have to say, I've read it a number of times, and I can't say that about all books because it's substantive, it's moving, it's necessary. And even though I don't have narcissistic parenting, there are some people in my lives who actually have some traits, and we'll cover that in this conversation. So I think it's relevant to many people, whether you are a child of a narcissistic parent or a parent at work or somebody else in your family or friend network. It's a topic that's made the headlines, but I reckon not many people know that much about it. So we're going to delve deeper into it. And I think we're going to dispel some of the myths and also talk about how you come out the other side, how you recover and create the next chapter of your life. But before we do, I'd like you to welcome you to the show. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, it's lovely to be with you, genuinely. We are long friends, but also this is the first conversation I'm actually going to have about this book. So it's going to be interesting for me to sort of hear myself talk about it even to you. And I hope that it will be interesting to your listeners and subscribers because this is the first time that I'll be sharing some information and knowledge that I have.
There you go. And you've spent a huge amount of time not only researching and writing the book, but of course comes from your own psychotherapy practice over many, many years and other experiences in your life. But as I said, in the media, it's a term that's bandied around. And frankly, I reckon if many of us ask ourselves the question, do we actually understand what it means? I reckon we'd probably fluff our lines. So let's start the conversation with, how do you define narcissism and give us a flavour of how it shows up?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that there's a lot of misconception or lack of knowledge. And even when I was training as a psychotherapist 12 years ago, although we covered personality disorders, which it is, so narcissistic personality disorder is what we call a cluster B personality disorder. It's a diagnosable disorder. But it has these two interesting pieces, which we can have narcissistic traits, which most of us will have. Narcissistic personality, which is a bit more pervasive, and then a diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder. And when you're dealing with someone that's got NPD, you know about it once you know what you're looking for. But when I was training, we didn't spend a huge amount of time on it. So therefore, I'd imagine anybody in the general public, why would you ever need to unless you really had reason to seek it? That said, if we look at NarcTalk and we look at lots of different, I write for a magazine as well, lots and lots of calls and requests for knowledge in this space right now. But what's difficult is because none of this is fully regulated, people can write anything they want to about it and suddenly it becomes fact, right? So fake news for any topic in this current world, but never more so than for narcissism. So lots misunderstood about it. And what's frustrating about that, both as a clinician and a human who's experienced it, is that those that really need support, help and understanding kind of might get an eye roll if they bring it up, these at the moment, which is obviously incredibly unhelpful and very isolating. But equally, many people are accused of either having it when they really don't. They're just difficult, slightly annoying, maybe a bit selfish, various other things. But the actual diagnostic manual is the DCM-5, is actually the manual. I've got it next to me. It's a big tome of a book which diagnoses all sorts of mental health disorders, and it helps practitioners who are trying to figure out how to help someone understand what's really going on for them. So within that, there are 9 key traits. I won't go through them all, but if you go online, you can find them. And the way we currently define it, I think, is sort of slightly part of the problem. And I think it's currently under review because sort of some of the key traits are things like grandiosity, of course, lack of empathy, those kinds of things. But what it means, I feel at the moment with the 9 criteria are we're describing what we would class as a grandiose narcissist, which is the type that we would probably spot even if we're not trained. We really now understand there are a couple more flavours of narcissists. There are covert narcissists that are much more vulnerable and subtle and will come at you for sympathy rather than grandiosity. So often someone says, but they seem so sweet and so nice and so shy or so introverted, which is very much the opposite of the diagnostic manual setting. But actually, they're just as lethal when they're let loose.
Right.
And then the final third is that we call the malignant narcissist. There are some other subsets, but the malignant is a lot more aggressive. And we talk a lot about the dark triad in psychotherapy: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Malignants are moving a bit more towards the psychopathy side. So that's kind of the framing. So dark triads, the 9 traits, but I would really stick with thinking about the grandiose and the covert, because I think they are the 2 categories that help us understand what I might be dealing with.
And there's a lot of control, either implicit or explicit, that pervades people's lives. And just give us a flavour, hint, of, given I know this is a huge subject, or how it varies in terms of its incident by age, gender, or anything else. Are there any patterns we should be aware of?
So, diagnostically really difficult, because most narcissists don't believe they have any kind of a problem. So they're not going to take themselves off to a psychiatrist or a psychologist to get a diagnosis. So therefore, we're going to underdiagnose, certainly. So the statistical numbers are 0.5% of the population to 6.2. Now, given your background at PwC, that's quite a big difference in a number, but it depends again on geography, it depends on class systems and various other things. So being able to afford to go to a psychiatrist or have access to one, but equally you may find people that are in the criminal system or social services system may be more likely to get an actual diagnosis than maybe someone that's a CEO of an organisation that believes there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're not going to take themselves off. So you've got that. However, there's been some new research coming forward to say, if we think about what we call subclinical, so personality and or traits, we're talking around about 10% of the population. We're saying 12% of the UK population, we believe, shows traits or personality, more pervasive, more regular occurrences of showing these personality traits. So if we think about a room of 100 people, 10 or 12, that's quite a lot.
Absolutely. And you talk about, and you talked about this already, about being covert, one aspect, and you talk about being narcissist and narcissistic parents often operating in plain sight. I want to get a little bit more practical now, through obviously all your work. Just paint the picture of a life in the day of a child of a narcissistic parent. I know there are lots of different variations and views and so on, but just paint us the picture, what it looks like and feels like.
Okay. And when we say child, David, I could be talking about a 5-year-old and I could be talking about a 65-year-old, because we're all somebody's child. And I sort of start the book with that. So the story goes that fundamentally, whatever your experience of the world is as a child is going to be manipulated and influenced by this parent. Now, this parent may need to live vicariously through you. So if they wanted to be a barrister when they were a kid and didn't make it, they might be absolutely hell-bent that is what you were going to do. And when you become one, they're going to tell everybody about it, and they're going to say, it's because of me that they did so well. They've got my brain, they've got my ability. Maybe I gave up my chance to be a barrister so I could allow my child to come forward and be that. So there's lots of living vicariously. You will also get a lot of, I gave up a lot for you. I sacrificed my career, my life, my body. Sometimes you'll get mothers saying things like that. But more than anything, there's going to be a Jekyll and Hyde. So for the child, the thing that's most confusing is public image versus private reality. So your parent might be on the side of the football pitch. They might be picking you up from your exams. They might be taking you to a ballet class, and everybody says, oh, your mum or your dad, they're really nice. They're really nice. And the minute the front door is closed at home, it's a whole nother story. But the hidden in plain sight is that it's all going on. The Jekyll and Hyde is going on, but they're so performative. The parent is so performative that the child becomes very confused about. I do see them when they're really lovely to me in public, but behind closed doors, they're either in pieces or they're absolutely having a run at me. And I don't know where to go with it. There's no safe place for me to go with it. And what happens is the child begins to question their own reality. They begin to wonder, maybe I'm getting it wrong. Maybe I don't understand it. Maybe it's me, which is the biggest issue, because we begin to chip away at that child's reality and personality. And that's why I often talk in this book about identity theft. You know,
Yes.
the parent is stealing the child's reality and therefore their own identity. And anyone that's a healthy parent knows, or even a healthy boss knows, our job surely is to help our child or our people that work for us to absolutely flourish in their own right and in their own way. A narcissistic parent boss is someone who is absolutely not interested in what you think or what you feel. It's got to be their way or no way at all.
Fascinating and disturbing. How conscious are these parents at home or at work of not only what they're doing, but the harm they're causing?
So they would not see this as harmful. They do not see their behaviour as in any way troublesome at all. And the question I often get asked is narcissism treatable? Is it curable? Those kinds of questions come a lot. As a human and a therapist, I'm devastated to say that it is not. There is no evidence at the moment that it is in any way curable. It's not medicatable. It's not curable. The best we can hope for is a performative change, a short-term performative. So something may happen in a narcissistic parent's life that is quite shocking or devastating to them, such as a child cutting them off, for example.
Yes.
And they may initially gnash their teeth or say, isn't this awful for me after everything I've done? But over time may begin to have some sense of maybe there's some responsibility. So performatively, they might temporarily improve. They might apologise. They might say, I know I've not been easy, but relatively swiftly, they will come back to the original shape of the narcissist. So in answer to your question, they don't really have a sense of their own behaviours. And if they did, they would be highly defended because at the core of this, you know, if this disorder is a complete lack of ego, which is what's misunderstood. People think they've got a big ego. That's just a mask. Their ego is so empty, so shattered. They're so fearful that if you could really see behind the mask, you would discover that actually there's, you know, they're not okay. They're not happy. They're not well people. The mask has been absolutely glued on to make sure that they're not discovered because they feel so empty and so less than. And so anyone that might come along and try and winkle with getting behind that mask or getting them to appreciate or see or accept is not welcome, and you will be pushed away, you'll be rejected, they may attempt some sort of psychological annihilation of you, or indeed they'll move away from you altogether or make it your fault. So they're not really aware, and when they do have some minor insight, it is of great threat to them. The insight is a great threat to their system.
So the idea of trying, if you were one of the children, trying to change them, frankly, won't work. It's more about how you, in the short term, cope, survive, and then try and find a new path. And we'll come on.
You cope, survive, you manage, and we'll come on to the new path.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm sure for some of the people listening into this, you know, to even have a notion, human to human, that we can't get better or something can't be healed or there isn't a way of in some way improving this, you know, for me, as I said, is so unpalatable. And I really understand that. And it took me quite a lot of gnashing of teeth in my own training and my research to truly accept that this is the case. But as far as all the research we have so far, it's true.
I want to move from, I guess, the parent and the child relationship to the broader family dynamic. And you've touched on this before. And you in the book, not only share some very, very powerful stories, I mean, both very educational and shocking, but it's shocking in an important way. But also you compare and contrast the, if you like, the characteristics of a psychologically healthy family with a family with narcissism from the parents. Just pick out a few of the main differences between them.
Well, so much is about boundaries. So again, if ever I'm working with families or in couples work, we talk about the nucleus of a traditional family, might I say, because we live in a modern world. But the nucleus is that the couple are very much close in together. Two individuals, but you're close in together. The children then sit just outside that circle. If you think about a constellation, just outside that planetary circle, and then maybe grandparents, aunties and uncles, family, friends, and so the constellation moves out. In a narcissistic family, the narcissist has got to maintain the control of the system, has got to maintain this false ideal, has got to maintain this public image. And so often you find that the partner, once they've really discovered what they're dealing with, it causes a lot of problems, as you can imagine, in a marriage, or in a partnership, etc. And so often there's an ostracization. Often a partner will end up being ostracized, or they will conform. They'll go the other way, which is they'll just give up trying, and they'll just conform to keep the peace. They may feel they're keeping the peace to protect the children. They may feel they're keeping the peace because there's financial or emotional control. Coercive control is very common in the relationships with narcissists. And so for the children, what you might find is the children then get split into what we call golden child, lost child, scapegoated child, amongst others. And they begin to play a part. And often you'll find the golden child, for example, particularly if they're the opposite sex of the narcissistic parent, they'll be encouraged to become enmeshed. They can become a quasi partner. They're there to really back up this parent, either to defend the parent to the rest of the family that's having a pop at them, or indeed to supplement the encouragement, the closeness, the sympathy that the narcissist isn't getting in some form. So all of them have got a job. You may find the scapegoated child is the one that has all the projections of the narcissist. So all the elements the narcissist doesn't like about themselves, their anger, their irritability, the fact they're terrible at maths, whatever it may be. That scapegoated child will be told, oh, you're the angry one, you're the picky one, you're the difficult one, because the narcissist can't hold it. So the scapegoated child begins to feel, oh my God, I must be all of these things. The lost child, in some ways, is, no one's lucky in these families, trust me, but they've noticed what goes on if you're golden, and they don't really want to be involved in it. They don't want to be in the line of sight. And they've also noticed what happens to the scapegoat child. So they just pull away together. Right. This is the kind of child that will spend their time in their bedroom, not getting involved in the family stuff, completely just finding themselves to be too busy. So that's the constellation. So there's no healthy partnership, children and wider family. And what you'll find is you've got what we call flying monkeys, enablers. You've got people in the family that all play their part in maintaining this false reality. So as much as they may notice that something's not quite right, they all find a way to just smooth it over, put it under the rug, and hope that we can all just continue as is.
And the reality is that wider family members, friends or others in the community may look on that family and think, hey, it's all dandy, everything's fine, look at them. And the switch in that Jekyll and Hyde is quite remarkable. I mean, you talked about obviously generational aspects. I'm curious to know how much this is passed on either by genetics or by the experience.
And again, frustratingly, I feel we can't 100% say that we know. There's still more research going on. However, there's been two interesting studies of recent years. So in 2022, there was a study on twins, genetic twins study by Roa. And what they discovered was one twin could go on to become narcissistic and the other didn't. This is identical twins as well. Wow. So that then brings into question the genetic element, because why wouldn't they both have it? And then in 2023, Dr. Mandal did a study on epigenetics, which is obviously how genes are formed via either traumatic experiences by our ancestors or people coming down the family line, and whether or not the mutation of those genes in some form has an effect on our emotional system, and certainly parts of our amygdala and other parts of the brain that we think are involved in narcissistic personality. So we're looking at it. We're interested to understand, where does it truly come from? I'm a psychodynamics therapist as well. I do feel that early childhood experiences often has a huge impact. Right. We do say often from the maternal side, I have to say, where if as a child you have had some shattering of no mirroring, so no good mirroring towards you, or you've been really neglected or rejected as a child,
yes.
your defense to be able to cope with that is potentially a narcissistic defense. Narcissism is a defensive technique. So it's a defending from the hurt or the shame or the neglect that you might have felt as a very, very young child. Often the narcissistic personality can come in front of that to defend you, to protect you. So I think there are the nature nurture. I don't think any of us can say that we absolutely know, but we're certainly looking at all of those elements at the moment.
So if you are one of the children you mentioned, perhaps not the golden child, or perhaps is the golden child, and you get to the point where you have coped, managed, survived, what are the triggers for them just to say, enough is enough? I need something different. I want to live differently. What helps them?
Well, yeah. In my experience of any type of abuse of any flavour, and I often talk about psychological abuse as sort of the final frontier. We understand domestic abuse now, not hitting children. I work with the NSPCC, and so what does that really look like? We've now understood sexual abuse. We think about the grooming gangs. We think about all awful things that have happened. And I think psychological abuse is now coming forward as the final piece of this. What does this look like? And not to say that any of these things are in any way better or worse or scoreable. It's just that they're there. So for me, what normally happens with this is that it's once you become a parent yourself. It is once you get yourself in that position and think, oh my goodness, I would never do that to my child. And suddenly we start to realise the delta between your normal growing up and the normal that you're providing for your child. It can often be when we are in a close relationship and we get to meet our spouse's family and realise that actually walking on eggshells or all the stuff that might go on isn't happening. So hang on a minute, something's different here. And we also find sometimes when we first go to therapy, and certainly for a lot of the clients I work with in this space, they may come to therapy with a different presenting material initially, but in a relatively short order, something will come up where there's a curiosity around what mum or dad might have been saying or doing, and it comes up multiple times. And then sometimes I'll get the question, which is, I've been reading, do you think? So normally it's a moment in our own life where we get enough distance from the parent to look at ourselves in adult form and think, there's something here that's not quite right. I just don't quite know what it is.
Yes. And in the aggregate, whether that's from your own work or the research you've done, how much can children in that position recover?
Well, my point of view, my lived experience, my clinical experience is you absolutely can recover. That's the best news. And what's important now and would be to find a therapist that is trained in this space. Because, as I said, when I was training, it wasn't a space that was given a huge amount of term time. And there wasn't a lot of books. There's now some fantastic books that have been written about it. Dr. Rahmani's work is absolutely fantastic. Sam Vaknin's work is fantastic. So now we're beginning to understand it better. If you can find a therapist that's trained a bit more specifically in it, you'll be held very safely in it. And in my experience of people that I work with and my own recovery journey, I would say that I am now healed. And if you'd asked me that a number of years ago, I couldn't imagine that I would ever really get over what happened. And actually, you absolutely can. But it's when you truly are willing to face into it, accept that, this really is happening or has happened, and you're committed to your recovery journey. Absolutely, you can recover.
You talked about your own experience. We're going to cover that in another podcast sometime later. You talk just then and in the book around recovering or finding your own voice, developing your own identity. And there's a lot of healing that has to go with that, of course. Within that overall framing of recovery and development, what are the hardest parts of the journey that people have to deal with as they do that?
The biggest part is often at the beginning, which is actually acceptance.
Right.
If we tussle with, but can this be true? If it's true, then what does that mean? I don't want to be unkind or rude or uncaring about my parent. They're still my parent for a lot of people. Often I get commentary online around, why do we always blame the parents? We really don't, we really don't. It's sort of a bit of a hackneyed view of therapy. But in this instance, there is something that has really gone wrong in that systemic sense of parenting. And so to begin to accept, no, this really has happened, and I need to find that some level of acceptance that is what I'm dealing with is absolutely the first part. Mm-hmm. Reading extensively, really important. I think meeting other people that have recovered,
yes,
because they validate some of the things that these parents do is so unbelievably weird that when we try and explain it to somebody else, people look at you in a very puzzled manner, particularly if they've had a relatively all right upbringing.
Yes.
So when you meet other people that have gone through it, and there are some similar behaviours that can happen, suddenly you feel like, I'm really not alone. Someone really gets it and really gets me. And I hope, some of the writing will help with that. But then we've got to do some inner child work, because you may have grown up from a 5 to a 15 to a 25, 35-year-old with this environment. So you've had different experiences at different ages, and there may be a 5-year-old that you've never gone back and dealt with who's really been very harmed and wounded by what's happened. So that's important. There's lots of other techniques, from boxing to two-chair work to writing letters. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And the biggest question we get is, do I address my parent about this or do I not? Big question marks about that as well.
Go on.
Well, it's a very, very personal experience, and everyone deals with things very differently, and so they should. My sense is that speaking our truth and finding our truth and standing in our truth is so critical as part of our recovery that in our own way, in our own language, we should try and find a way to utter that truth, whether it's through a letter, whether it's through a face-to-face meeting, whether it's through a mediated conversation, whether it's through a family therapeutic conversation. But a part of that little voice is finally able to say, when you did this, it harmed me. I think that's really important to your recovery. And what I say to my clients often is, it's a bit of a one-way street. It really doesn't matter what their response is, which is unusual for therapy. What it's about is being able to take it and land it on the parent, and you leave it on that doorstep. They may try and give it back to you. They may try and excuse it, fight about it. We're not really interested. What we're interested in is being able to say, this is what happened to me because of what you did. That's it.
Yes,
so often people say, but I'm worried what will happen. It's teaching them not to worry about what will happen.
It's up to you. What about people who have gone through this often awful experience, but frankly have done very little inner work along the way, either by themselves, never have worked with any form of therapist before, and in some countries, having a therapist or talking about a therapist is quite common. The US, for example, in my experience. In other countries, it's not either the norm, or if it is the norm, people don't talk about it. But imagine you're one of these people who hasn't had that experience and yet, frankly, would benefit from it. How do you get over that inertia or sensitivity towards it?
Start safely, start by reading. And I think, there's a whole list of books. I can share them with you if that would help your listeners later. There's, because there's lots of stuff that's not great out there, but there's some good stuff out there. So from a safe distance, begin to read and see if you identify with what you're reading and what you're hearing and what you're seeing. Because as I said, the beginning of it is acceptance, so you can get that far. There's also some great techniques that you can find online that would actually also begin to help you. And at that point, you might decide, this is my own personal journey. I'll take my own view. I can't access, afford, or find a therapist, but you can begin to at least tell the inner part of you, I've got it and I've seen it and I'm recognizing it. I'm not abandoning that part that knows that something's wrong. You're saying to that inner part that is listening to you, by the way, all the time, I've got it. I'm onto it. The minute yourself knows you're onto it, you're already beginning the healing journey.
Yes.
And it may well be later on that you may go and, you could go to a group seminar where you haven't got to speak, but you could just listen and you're around other people. So I think whether you're someone that wants to share it all and talk about it all, or someone that just wants to quietly sit and listen, there's lots and lots of avenues for you to pursue in order to help you.
One of my questions that I used in preparation for this podcast, I'm now wondering if it's still relevant, because I do listen attentively through these conversations, contrary to popular belief, was if imagine you were a parent at work or at home listening to this conversation. I'm sure there are many people, and you hear all of this and you think, maybe there's an elements of my, not just traits, but some of my personality and some of my behaviours that are tipping towards a disorder. My question was, what do you do with it? The reason I'm hesitating in asking that question is, you said earlier on that actually one's self-recognition, if you are in the disorder category, is low to non-existent.
Yeah.
Rate my question. Is it still relevant?
It is relevant because I think you have got the spectrum of the traits, but you've also got, there will be people that have got the disorder who they'll have that slight moment. Something will happen and they will have a moment of realization. The question is what they'll do for any long period of time. So that's, it's difficult. And they may even come very hot and heavy onto the child to say, I've had this come to Jesus moment and I've realized, but unfortunately it's very unlikely, as I've said, I would say virtually impossible that would change.
Right.
The personality itself, I mean, a number of people have contacted me, even in the industry I used to work in, to say, oh my goodness, I'm a bit worried about my own children reading this because I wonder. My point to those people would be, if you're in that category where you've got a constant regular personality traits that are coming through, how willing are you to actually go and work on yourself to improve it?
Great point.
Because, consciousness is the beginning of healing for everybody. Once we're aware of something, we then have some level of control to change something. So if you're serious about thinking, do you know what, maybe my traits have become a bit more personality and it's running away with me a bit. If you're serious, then go and find a great therapist, go and start reading, because you can work on, you can improve, you can make meaningful differences, and you can help heal the relationship with your children if you're consistently able to hold responsibility for what's happened. And also, to be fair to you, find out why this might be the case for you, because I have huge sympathy for people that have these heavy traits and personalities as well. You weren't born wanting to be this way. Something's happened.
That's such a thoughtful response. I'm going to put you on the spot even more now and have some quick fire questions, maybe some trick questions in there as well, just to be cheeky. I talked about myths earlier on. What's the biggest myth about narcissism as a general topic, or narcissistic parenting, that you'd love to disappear?
That narcissists are all show-offs. Not true. That narcissistic parents are all aggressive. Not true.
Okay, that's two. God, two for the price of one. And what about what is the first sign that you experience or see or observe when you meet a peacock parent?
That they will tell me how incredible their children are, but they will link it in some way back to themselves.
You worked in a number of different organizations very successfully. Think about corporate cultures now. What's the big red flag of a culture that has a narcissistic leader at the top?
Well, I'm sure many of your listeners and subscribers have read Snakes in Suits, which was about pathology in the workplace. My view is that you're going to find people that will only want to share good news, people that will only attach themselves to success, people that will take a lot of personal credit for things. And even if that's the case, any good leader knows that you bring your team and you talk about your team with you. So those that distance themselves from difficulty, those that won't take responsibility when things have gone wrong, those that attach themselves to all the positive stuff, I'm immediately sniffing out something along the line. And the other one that I'll spot is someone who is very willing to throw their colleagues or people to the curb. They love blaming other people. Yes. They love slightly undoing someone who could be competitive to them.
God, I've experienced all of that and more. Maybe let's not talk about me.
Well, you imagine I used to be a headhunter, so
Yes, yes.
interviewing all these people, you can often ask people, when was the last time you were vulnerable at work, and people would look at me clueless. I'd be curious about that, and if I ask people, who is going to be your successor, and they couldn't tell me that because nobody was good enough, that would give me a bit of a clue as well.
You talked about what narcissistic parents might talk about, but let's be even a bit more specific about phrases. What would be one phrase that a particularly toxic narcissistic parent would come out with regularly?
I'm doing all of this for you.
There we go.
After everything I've done for you.
Yeah, ladling on the guilt and everything else.
Ladling on the guilt. And the other would be something around, I'm telling you this, or I'm doing this for your own good.
Oh, yes. God, I've heard that. Who hasn't heard that comment? Maybe again, it may not be a pervasive
it's
thing.
In the context, and it's
context.
In the, yeah.
Yes. Now, I'm curious about you as a psychotherapist and a person having done all the work to research and write the book. What's changed you the most from that journey, from that endeavour?
I think the need for further research to really help us understand it from a scientific perspective as much as behaviourally. For a lessening of the dramatic delivery of what this is, and actually for a more thoughtful, careful appreciation for this personality disorder. And the final thing that surprised me is the number of people that do seem to have been affected. My sense was this is a very niche book about a very niche topic, and in many ways it is. But it would appear that a lot of people either have experienced it or know someone that has, or has a partner who has a parent this way, or someone else. And the thing that comes out of all of it is they say to me, I don't know how to help them. I sit with them and I hear it, and I've got some semblance of what it means, but I don't know how to support them. And so part of this was about, how do I help people that haven't even got a parent like this themselves, but are around someone that has? How do you help them understand what it's really like and what they could do to get better?
Yes. Gosh. I want to drill down a little bit more about you now. Put you on the therapist couch at the moment. Your biggest superpower as a person?
I'm incredibly tenacious in everything. Friendships, research, my work. I won't take no for an answer. And that costs me sometimes, but I think it's a superpower that I would never want to let go of.
Love that at the end there. Yes. And your biggest weakness?
My desire to connect with people at a deep level. If I sit next to you at a dinner party, or I meet you at a gig, at the bus stop, or at work, and trying to appreciate that for some people that's too intense and it's too private, and that some people are uncomfortable connecting at that level, and to be able to accept that.
Yes. If you look about your own, all of your work, your body of work, what is the impact you're looking to have from that work on the world around you?
To help people make sense of what's happened to them. I think it's very lonely when you don't really understand what's happened to you, and you think that you might be the only one, or there's something wrong with you, or there's something that people don't know. Not being got by someone is so painful, which is why mirroring is so important for children, right? So for me, it's about, can I help some people, as many as I can get to make sense of what's happened to them, so that they can be free to go on and be all the things they were meant to be.
And your work already does that, and your book will do that. I'm sure it will become a seminal guide in this important area. And when you're having your best day, when everything's going in flow, you're just performing at your best, and everything's amazing. What habits do you use to help you do that?
I'm very, very fast as a person. And so I need someone around me who's equally fast. So as much as it sounds luxurious, I've always had a right-hander. I've got an EA, a PA, a chief of staff around me. They make it possible for me to run as fast as I do. And on the odd occasion, I lived in America for a little while, and for about 3 months, I didn't have that person. And literally everything fell apart. So I realised that for me to go as fast as I want and I need to, I need the other around me.
Yes,
that's really important.
That's great
Yeah.
self-awareness. As we draw this conversation to a close, I'd really like you to give particularly the children of narcissistic parents at home, at work, a final message. What would you say to them?
That you are somebody's child, and that those parents, in whatever guise they came, adopted, caregivers, whatever it may be, they had a duty of care to you. They will always have a duty of care to you. And if they did not fulfill that, that is on them and it's not on you. There's nothing wrong with you. And therefore, you will find, if you seek it, healing. You will find other people who are willing to parent you in micro, mini ways. Seek them, find them. And you are able to live a true life, to be your true self, to let your absolute voice be heard in the world. And you can do all of that without needing to harm anyone.
Oh, it takes quite a lot for me to be speechless when I hear words like that in terms of their meaning, their intent, and their impact. That is beautiful. I hope everyone takes in, and I probably encourage you to listen again to a number of aspects on there, because there's a lot being said in this conversation. Where can people find out more about your brilliant book and your work, Kathleen, when they go online?
If they're interested. So you can go on Amazon and you'll find the book, My Parent the Peacock. My publishing partner, Hachette. There's a lovely man that runs a fantastic bookstore called the Primrose Hill Bookstore, and he in London is the private seller that's looking after signed copies and things like that. But there's a number of events. I'm going to be speaking at a number of places like Soho House and the Roof Gardens and the Ivy Club, and I'm doing a number of things within New York as well at New Canaan Library. So I'll be doing lots of talks. But equally, I'm always happy to try and guide people, signpost people. So if people ever want to drop me a note and are looking for someone to help them, even if it's not me, I'm very, very happy to try and connect people to someone that I think might help. And as I said, other books and other works that I really think have got it right.
We'll put all the details, of course, in the show notes to this episode. There's many, many moving statements in your book, and I'm going to take one of them, particularly addressed to people affected by narcissism. And I quote, "To those people, hold steadfast to the knowledge that you deserve peace, respect, and a life free from manipulation. May this be the beginning of a future where your true voice is heard, your boundaries respected, and your spirit unburdened. Stand tall as you are always meant to, and let your true colours illuminate the world." There you have it. I think that's a great way to finish what has been an enlightening, moving, stimulating, and important, most of all, important conversation for everyone, not just the children of narcissistic parents. Kathleen, thank you for your time, wisdom, and attention today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for illuminating the topic, because I think the more we understand it, the more people will recover.
That was another edition of Lancefield on the Line. I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please do check out the other episodes in the series. Sign up to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, and if you're feeling especially generous, give us a 5-star rating. Kathleen, thank you ever so much again.